Hi, my name is Matt, and welcome to Education Exploration. On this podcast, we explore and learn about people serving in different career industries. The conversations focus on what it takes to reach our pathways and goals to educational and professional success. Well, welcome everyone back to the Education Exploration Podcast. This week's episode is incredibly exciting because I get a chance to catch up with a former colleague and learn a little bit about what she's been up to. I know she's had some changes in her life, some very positive changes. And so I'm incredibly looking forward to spending some time with her today on this episode. So if you would please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Lena Dominguez. And, I was a math teacher and now I'm a math instructional coach for Round Rock ISD.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it, Lena. So to kind of get us started on our topics for today, and, I know I did send you some questions, but if you can kind of just take us through a little bit about what was your college journey like? Where'd you go to school? What'd you major in? Those types of things.
Okay, college sucked. I went to Texas State and I went immediately after high school, and I had to put myself through college, which is why it sucked. So while being a full-time student, I was also working 40 to 50 hours a week. I didn't get to have the fun college experience. I went to one college party my entire college career, and honestly, I was so tired that I don't think I hung out with them past midnight. But I mean, that's just the college experience. I would say I had some really great professors there. I had a great learning experience. I actually went and got accepted into the School of Business. My bachelor's, I have a BBA in business management. And at Texas State, really awesome professors. I think I learned a lot from them and got some really good pointers for life in general. So that was my first college experience. My second college experience, I got my master's online a couple years ago. So I did that during being pregnant with my first and then right after having her. So that was also probably not the best college experience either. But yeah, it is what it is. I got a good degree, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So very much like you, I started along the path of business as well. And I actually have my undergrad in general business from University of Texas at San Antonio. And so I have a special place for all the things that I learned as a business student. And so I'm kind of just wondering I'll say it like this. Why did you choose business as a undergrad degree?
So I'm the first one in my family to go to college, and this sounds terrible. So keep the judging to a minimum. But my parents very much did not want me to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher. My parents did not want me to be a teacher. I was the first one to go to college, and they wanted me to be something so much more. They were aiming for a lawyer, doctor, and I absolutely was not aiming for a lawyer or a doctor. I hate arguing. And while I can handle the sight of blood, hours of biology classes and studying cell mitosis and meiosis just wasn't my thing. So business was kind of happy medium, because I guess they were like, oh, okay, she'll own her own company and become this huge CEO. So business was like a compromise with my parents, even though, again, I had to put myself through school. So I don't know why I cared so much about what they wanted, but I did. And I graduated and did 10 years in corporate America. You're going to love this. I did adult education. So I did online learning, and I traveled all over the United States doing face-to-face learning, brick and mortar is what they called it, for software for about 5 years. And then I switched to HR skills, public speaking, which I've lost all the skills. I can't do public speaking anymore without saying 1,000 times, so please excuse that. And communication skills, time management, stuff like that. So that's what I did 10 years after graduating. So, in my 30s, I finally decided, I should probably please me instead of my parents. And that's when I quit corporate America, and I got really lucky and got a job in Round Rock as a 7th grade math teacher. And as soon as I had been in my campus for 2 years, I went for my master's. So I could become a principal one day. And so I have my master's in educational leadership. And I taught for 3 more years after that, and then I switched to become an instructional coach.
So that's a great story. And I'm really glad that you painted the picture in that way, because very much like you, I didn't start teaching until I was 30. And I think looking back on it, and I've shared this with other guests on the podcast, but I think having that experience really elevated my ability to be able to, well, one, stand in front of a whole bunch of kids that, I didn't know anything about. And I'm like, here I have a room full of, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, like, what are we doing today, guys, type of thing, right? But so to kind of back up a little bit, because I'm really curious about this, is if I were to ask you, like, what was your takeaways from spending that time in corporate America? Again, you said you were, mainly doing adult education work. How has those skills transformed you into the teacher that you are today?
That's a good question. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know if it really impacted my teaching skills. I say what it impacted the most is my relationship with my principal and my admin team, because I came in with a completely different perspective than all the teachers that I work with. I don't know if it's, because I'm coming in, I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm coming in with new teachers who are millennials. And I know, Matt, you're much older than that, so you probably can't relate to this. But, I had a hard time relating to these millennial teachers who were like very much entitled and like, oh, they can't fire me. They need to give me X, Y, and Z, and they need to give me this, this, and this. And I'm like, no, they don't, because I was working during, the employment dip in 2008, and where half of my friends all lost their jobs. And so I have this way different, perspective where it's like, no, I'm going to do what I'm told. I'm not going to be entitled. I'm not going to expect everything. I'm going to work my hardest and do what I have to do. So I would definitely say my corporate experience affected that relationship. I think my admin team liked me as a person a little bit better, maybe. I don't know how to describe it, but they knew that, they didn't have to, they knew I was going to take care of it. They knew I wasn't going to give them a hard time. They knew I wasn't going to make, excessive demands, and I was going to do what was best for the kids.
Okay, great. Yeah. So kind of my part two to that question is, what was the transition like for you from moving from corporate America into the classroom? And mainly, I'm kind of curious about what that journey looked like for you. And then the other part to that is, how did you handle that as you're working your way into a different career path, if you will?
So I'm probably not going to give you the response that you're wanting to hear, the one that's going to help out the majority of your listeners who are maybe in a similar situation. But honestly, it was so smooth and it went so well, and it felt like finally this is where I'm supposed to be. Why didn't I do this 10 years ago? Oh my gosh. And don't get me wrong, I had my hard days. I worked in a Title I school. My first year teaching 7th grade math, I had a kid who could not add 10 plus 5 or something, like he had to use his fingers. And, when I asked him to do 10 minus 5, he had to write it out, and he had to cross out the 1 and then carry the 1 over the 0, which essentially is still, 10 minus 5. And that's what I was working with my first year. And I was shocked. I was so shocked. So I had my challenges. I had behavior challenges. I had all sorts of interesting challenges. But as far as the transition goes, it's like, that's where I was supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to do. I didn't have that. I didn't have those doubts. I didn't have the oh my gosh, I'm going back. None of that ever crossed my mind. It was... Mm-hmm. It was very seamless for me to I quit my job, and literally the next day I started reporting to a school, literally the next day. So it was just meant to be. So
yeah. So did you get alternatively certified, or did you go through?
I got okay. So little secret, I actually got alternatively certified 2 years after I graduated college, when I was still in corporate America. Because again, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But I got alternatively certified 2 years after I graduated, but I still spent another 8 years in corporate America before I actually used it.
And see, I'm actually glad that you said it exactly that way, because one of the things that I'm trying to sort of help people by, putting this type of content online is that just because you're in a certain situation doesn't mean it's going to be forever, right? And so the other part to that too is, what are you doing to help prepare yourself for future opportunities? And you recognize that, hey, this isn't exactly what I want to be doing, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a certification and I'm going to prepare myself to be able to what I like to call like pivot if I needed to, right? And so ultimately that ended up being a very successful thing for you, because if it wasn't for that, then you wouldn't be where you're at today, right? Is that kind of fair to say?
Absolutely. It was a fluke that I decided that one year during the summer, hey, I'm going to start applying for teaching positions. I'm done. I want to start. And obviously if I had just started then and I hadn't done my alternative certification, I wouldn't have been able to accept the job, or because there's so many things you have to do before. And well, actually, no, I think people are doing it this moment of, I don't know how it works anymore. To be perfectly honest, I did it so long ago now, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it works anymore. I know I had to do stuff prior before I was allowed in the classroom, so maybe that's changed. I don't know. I don't know, Matt.
Yeah. No, I know.
That was
And
almost 20 years ago. Okay.
and every program is so different and unique. What, if you don't mind me asking, what program did you go through?
I did Texas teachers.
Same here. All right. So to kind of pivot a little bit about, what we've been talking about so far. So I'm curious to know a little bit about what your classroom experience was like. Because I didn't meet you until I came back to Hernandez and, supported as an instructional technology specialist. And that's how you and I got to know each other. But I'm curious to kind of know a little bit about what that career was like at that campus.
It definitely changed year by year. One thing I will say is that each year we tried something new. And again, it was all for the kids. We're trying to find what works for the kids. I know doing something new, and not having some consistency, it can be really rough, especially like I'm a type A personality. I have a schedule. I mean, I have the next 10 years of my life planned. Doing one thing one year and being like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to switch to something else. That normally would have really affected me. But one thing that I always kept in my heart is like, it's for the kids and what's going to work best for them. And like, oh, there's this new study and, XYZ, did this and Marzano says this. And so we would try different things. And so that definitely affected what my year was like. I think my first year, it was very much about just helping I was a math teacher and there was a huge focus on reading. And I didn't have an assistant principal at the time who had any math experience or particularly, knew how to really coach and really focus on it. So it seemed like the whole admin team was very much focused on ELA. And then the very next year I got someone who was math focused and they'd done XYZ and we need to do XYZ in the classroom. And so that it definitely changed year by year, but it was always, I feel like I learned something new and I took something positive from all of it. I don't think there was one new thing I tried in my classroom or one new experience I had that was bad. Because again, it helped, one group of kids, or it helped, this group of kids, or even it helped all the kids. So that was very positive with it.
Yeah, one thing that I do want to mention to our audience is that, I had I guess I will call it the great opportunity for me to be able to spend some time in your classroom. And one thing that I noticed right away is that you were willing to try different things in the classroom to help your kids. But not only that, and it's kind of hard for me to put into words, but it's almost like the kids gravitated towards your particular teaching style and structure. And I was looking around, the few times that I had an opportunity to visit your classroom, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, I mean, and again, I didn't know how much teaching experience you had at the time, but I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I mean, these kids they're engaged, they have choice, they are learning or I'll say it like this, learning in ways that really, I guess, appeal to their learning style. And so can you kind of just talk me through, like, how did you develop that over time?
So honestly, that's not stuff that I came in with, because I came in with adult education. This is how we're going to train you. And that's it. I didn't have to think about, engaging young minds and, because it's so different, especially at the elementary level, or not elementary, the middle school level, because their minds are somewhere else. There's so much going on, especially at a Title I school. There's so much going on with them. Like, education is like the last thing. So you do have to do fun things to engage them and hook them and get them in. Mm-hmm. And I was so lucky to be at the campus I was at. I was so lucky to have the admin that I did, because, that's something they talked about. And I was sent on some pretty awesome PDs where we did integrate technology into the classroom. And there was all these awesome things like, Nearpod, where I could, they could do their work on the computer. Kids love playing on the computer, they love writing on the computer, and they love playing games. And so if you can like integrate that and still like get data from it so you know where they're at, I mean, that's huge, because it's one thing to let them do, a fun activity from Teachers Pay Teachers. Ooh, yay, we get to play this game. Or on, oh, look, this cool math game. Oh, that's so much fun. Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't get any data from that cool math site. So I don't know how my kids are learning or what they're doing. And I'm sorry, but like more than half the stuff on Teachers Pay Teachers, like none of that's aligned to Texas TEKS. That's all Common Core. So like I wasn't getting, like, you can't get good data from some of that stuff. So luckily I was able to attend some, PDs that talk about, okay, let's use our TEKS, let's use our stuff, and let's integrate it into Nearpod, let's integrate it into Kahoot, or let's use Socrative, or all these different avenues where I can get them excited about, okay, yes, you are doing technology, you are having fun, but I'm getting data from it. I can see that, okay, from this last Kahoot game where we were covering, the area of circles, you got 4 out of 5, and now you have 5 out of 5. So you've shown me some growth. I can get that data, which is like crucial. But I know you really focus, and as far as like giving them choice, I mean, that's everything too, because I had kids who didn't want to play on the computer. I had one year a very, very emotionally disturbed student who I was the only teacher who never cussed out. So yay me, who didn't want to do computers. He didn't want to do anything. And so what I would have to do is I'd have to get the rest of the class going. And then, yes, I would get them working. And then I would come and do a special private lesson for this one kid in this big class, just because, that's what you had to do for that one kid. And that's something that we got from I think somebody came in. I didn't even go anywhere for that training. Like the campus brought somebody in. They were talking about, the importance of engaging all your students and just, not leaving that one behind. So yeah, I got lucky, Matt. I got some really good principals. I got a really good district that, cares about that. And I got fortunate because I know, there's some small districts out there that don't have budgets for, technology, or they don't have budgets for, bringing people in to talk about, students who might need more emotional needs, socially emotional learning. That's what it's called these days, SEL. And I think my first couple years, like, it's so overwhelming. Like, you don't exactly reach out on your own and do this learning, because when you have a break from school, you're like, I have to decompress. But because those first few years, they were bringing so many people in, I was able to get that. I guess kind of a piece of advice I'd throw out to anyone else who is maybe at a smaller district and they're not getting like the resources coming in. They're not getting money to be able to go out. I know the first 2, maybe 3 years are sucky. They're hard. You're struggling to stay alive. But after that, make sure you start investing in yourself and you are doing your own reading. There's so many reading lists that you can look up to kind of help with, well, right now, the whole big thing, there's the social emotional learning. There's a big push now for restorative practices. I've attended a number of those trainings, but before I did the trainings, I actually had to research it on my own because I found out about it through my master's program, and they just briefly discussed it, and I wasn't getting any training on it yet in my campus. I didn't really know of anything nearby, so I started reading, and I started, going through scholarly articles that you can find, and that's how I was able to invest in myself and do it basically obviously for free, unless I bought a book off Kindle or iTunes. But that's crucial. If you're not getting the extra resources, you have to be looking it up for yourself. You have to be seeing what's going on in the world, and the realization, a couple years back with, we're not treating our Black students equitably, and what can we do for that? Again, that wasn't something I was specifically getting, so I had to research that on my own. So
yeah, and I'm actually glad that you mentioned about being able to learn things on your own, so to speak, but more so because like this whole idea of being a lifelong learner, I still struggle with that even today. I mean, I've done, some things that have helped me in my career and, gone and sought out people and things like that. But you're absolutely right. Like if you don't have those resources available, then, alongside your advice, I mean, like use Google, and I mean, go on YouTube. And I mean, there's people posting lectures and, talks and all different kinds of things, and social media too. I mean, follow these people that, the quote unquote experts, right? But even somebody like you, I mean, that, has done some amazing things. And I mean, I'm sure that in the future, you're going to be in a position to be able to influence more people and, those types of things. And so I kind of want to transition a little bit now to talking about leadership. And so I haven't really had the opportunity to kind of speak to that. You're actually my first guest that is an instructional coach. And so I kind of want to learn a little bit more about what that looks like. And you can kind of talk us through, if you want, what that looks like coming out of the classroom into that leadership role, or you can frame it as like, how did you use your graduate degree to help you? Because you have a master's in educational leadership, right? Okay. So, you can frame it in either one of those ways.
So I got my master's because I do want to become an assistant principal one day and then a principal one day. And I mean, I want to influence more and more people. But I'm going to say this, coming out of the classroom, was devastating. I did not have babies. I did not have 130 babies that were mine, that were excited to see me, that, I used their names when I was creating math problems for the warm-ups and for test questions. It hurt. It was so sad. And then I went to a campus and there were some great teachers. There's always some great teachers. And then there's always some teachers that aren't as great, that need your help a little bit more. And one of the teachers that I was helping, you could tell she was just done. And she didn't love her babies. And it's like, my heart. But I had to keep telling myself, it's like, okay, yes, I had 130 kids, but now I am supporting a team of close to 15 teachers, and 10 of them have 130 kids. So, when you multiply that out, it's like, okay, this is what I wanted. I wanted to be able to reach more people. I've, done all this research and all this practice with, equitable teaching practices. That's something that's been very important to me, and something I've been very passionate about these past couple of years, especially. But just overall instruction. One thing that I've always pushed away from is and something that I saw at this campus when I first started, even from the good teachers, is I would walk into a classroom and there's 3 different colored worksheets on their desk, and that's all the kids are doing. Do worksheet 1, and go to worksheet 2, and go to worksheet 3. And that's all we're doing. Worksheet, day after day after day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that sucks. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do that. And I love math, really love math. Do not want to do worksheets all day. That's what I wanted. And I was able to do that. So I was able to go in and what? How about we'll do this? You're right. This worksheet is great. It has some really good problems that cover this teak. You'll really get good data on whether your kids understand it or not. But let's do it in a game. Let's, use quizzes, or let's use Kahoot, or, what's really fun is, there's this application where the kids can actually draw this out, and you can get all their pictures on a computer screen, and you can post them up. But that is okay, because in this new position, I'm able to go in and I can hold their hand. And that's what I did. I would be in their classes, and we would be running this technology game. And if there was a glitch, I was there to help them work through it. And it was all good. And there's no big deal with it. And what's even more fun is showing them how to do this with Google Classroom. Oh gosh, Google is amazing. But getting data from Google quizzes. And guess what? You don't have to take 1,000 papers home anymore. Oh my gosh. You can just access it from your home computer, and you can see all their data. You can do grades there, and you're not killing your back. So I was able to do this for these teachers, which made their lives easier, and I was able to give all these kids so much more to more engaging math experience, which was also amazing, because I went to a campus that obviously was a lot larger. It was well over 1,000 kids, and I had come from a campus that was under 800. So I was doing what I wanted to do, even though it was scary, and I was so sad about not having my babies. Using this leadership and taking it out, and being able to help everyone else. That was what I wanted to do, and that's what I'm doing. So it feels good.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect. I mean, it is challenging sometimes to, I don't know. I mean, technology is not going away. I will tell you that much, right? And we all kind of know that, but at the same time, it's how can you help teachers embrace that. And, we're going to be going back to a different environment, right? And that's just going to be a given. I mean, unfortunately, it is what it is. I mean, but I've had a couple of colleagues tell me that, they've told me, Matt, you've been pushing technology for years and years and years. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, here we are. Like all of a sudden, like everyone has to become some sort of, technology. I don't even want to say guru because that's not the right word to use. But at some point, we're going to have to learn how to use technology in the classroom at least a foundational level. And so again, going back to my time watching you in the classroom, I mean, you really took off with that and you really embraced it, and you were pushing your kids to be able to try these different applications. You mentioned Nearpod and, Kahoot and those types of things. And so I really admire that about you and being able to take that leap with your kids. So a question that I have for you, and like, if you could go back in time, and if there is something or some things that you wish you would have known, either in your career, about life, just, and maybe fusing those things together, what would it have been? Like, here you are very well off in your career. I mean, you have these aspirations and goals. Like, what would you have wanted to have known back then before you even got started on this journey?
Gosh, I don't know. That's a hard one.
Or we can frame it this way. Is there anything that you would have changed or done differently, or maybe done more of in order to maybe get where you would like to be in the future?
Nat, I'm pretty sure I'm perfect and I did everything perfectly from the start. No, that's a blatant lie. There's so much, like, you always beat yourself up because you reflect back and you're like, oh my gosh, I taught that way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I said that to that student. I had no idea about this, or I didn't know about just kind of the whole equity study when I first started. And I think while I have a Hispanic background, my family's from Spain, I'm still technically white. So I've always had the white privilege. And so I've always had that mentality and that mindset. And I always consider myself, oh, I'm not racist. I treat everyone equally. And the thing is, you can't treat everyone equally. There are some people, there's going to be some kids who need something more. And I always think of this one graphic that I've seen where, it's pretty mainstream, where there's these kids trying to look over a fence to watch a baseball game. And, equity is giving them all the same stool, but of course they're not all the same height. So there's still that little shorty who can't see. But when you you give everyone what they need, yes, the shorter kid's going to have a bigger stool, but you know what? They're getting the same thing, that they're getting what they need to be on level with everyone else. NAEP, which, I've done that. They're coaching for equity. And also I did it as a teacher. They're teaching for equity in the classroom. They have an even better graphic where they're having kids who are trying to reach a whiteboard, and they have those steps, but then there's this other kid who's in a wheelchair that no matter what step you provide that child, they're not going to be able to reach it. So they have their own little whiteboard with them. And so I think if I had known that probably from the beginning, I felt like I was probably I was treating everyone equally. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to make sure I call in every single person in the room. I always made sure I talk to everyone, every class. But there were some days that were probably where, you know what, this kid, I can tell they're having an emotionally bad day. I don't think I need to ask them, to tell me what the square root of this number is. I just need to talk to them after class and just touch and make sure they're okay. Or there's this other student who is just, oh gosh, they're usually the student that annoys you, but they're the ones that need the most love and attention. They're ones that talk a lot and they're a little ADHD. And you know what? Maybe that kid needs just a couple of extra questions to feel better affirmed with himself. And again, that's not exactly equal, but it's giving those kids what they need. And I think I wish I'd known that from the beginning, because I know in the very beginning, I was very much about, I'm going to give everyone the exact same amount. I'm not going to do anything differently. It doesn't matter if this kid, has this issue, or, this kid is having this kind of day. Everyone gets the same. And that is probably one of my biggest regrets. looking back. It's just making, I guess not being more well-versed even before I started the job. I was always a huge reader. I wasn't reading the right things. I think once I got into education and I was coming across all these things and just everything that's in the media now, like my reading list has expanded even more. And it's all stuff I guess I wish I would have known back then. But, hindsight in 2020 and all that other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we kind of end our podcast for today, I do have one more question. So if you were to give advice to someone, and I think you had mentioned this earlier, but someone that's looking to either get into education or maybe someone that's in the classroom that is looking to become an instructional coach and, move up in leadership, what kind of advice would you give them as far as like how to set that path?
You've got to be open, and you've got to be open to change. If you're going to go into the classroom, it's going to be a huge change, and know that every year you're going to have different expectations from the admin, and it's going to be like it's your first year every single year. There's going to be different changes that they throw at you. There's going to be different things that they want you to try. And if they're not giving you different things to try, then you better be researching and finding your own different things to try, because you should never be okay with the status quo. I feel like once you're okay with the status quo and saying, oh, my kids are good enough, oh, my test scores are good enough, then you're done. You're done. Get out, because you're not helping the kids anymore. You should always be striving to help our kids do even better than what, they've done before, what you've done before with them. As far as being in the classroom, that's crucial. As far as going into leadership and being an instructional coach and helping other teachers, same advice. But the thing I would tell you is that, and something that I've had to learn, is it's really important for people to kind of come to their own conclusions. You can't just say, the sky is blue. I can say that, but, if someone's never been outdoors, they're going to be like, okay, that's nice. Way to go, Lena. And they may or may not believe me until they go out and they see it themselves. So as someone who's, new in a leadership role or trying to get to there, make sure that you're not there to tell people the sky is blue. You're there to help people get outdoors and see it for themselves.
That is a great thing to say. And I appreciate you saying that. So that's a great segue to closing out the podcast. I always try to encourage my guests to kind of leave some inspirational words for our listeners out there today. And so if you can kind of just share your thoughts around what would you say to somebody that is thinking about, either changing careers, or because the whole premise behind this podcast is like career, life, and learning. And I try my best to make sure that every episode, is tailored towards those three things. And so what would you say to someone that is out there listening that is, maybe not so sure about if their job is right for them, or if they're thinking about a career move, again, kind of going back to your experience coming from corporate America into the education world?
It can't hurt to try. I mean, I don't even want to imagine where I would have been mentally if I had just continued to stay in corporate America and not, just given it a shot. And I feel like that goes with everything. Like I'm telling, the advice I've been giving, be open to change, try this new initiative that this new admin may tell you to do. And you have to give it a shot, and you have to put your all into it to see if it will actually work and pan out for you. If you don't, then guess what? It's not going to work. If I didn't give it a shot, guess what? I wouldn't be a teacher. If I didn't give the shot for, equitable learning in the classroom, then guess what? I'd probably be still doing a terrible job and doing a huge disservice to my minority students. If I didn't give it a shot and put all my into it, then I wouldn't have gotten my position as an instructional coach and trying again to influence so many more kids and so many more teachers with all these wonderful things that I've had the ability to learn and be exposed to.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Be sure to subscribe. Episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow me on social media using the handles @education_explode or @MattEdutech. We'll chat again soon.